Meet the Nashville Predators. They're not very good. A team that went all in during the offseason. Stamkos, Brady Shea, Marchessault, they re-signed Yossi Saros and trade Askarov, all for the small window that they created for the Stanley Cup. Along with them were Yossi, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Novak, Evangelista. Maybe not a cup contender, but you wouldn't be wrong if you thought that this team right here would be a playoff team. They aren't. Over $100 million spent, and they're now in battles bottom of the league with the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres. This team. But how did they get here? With a worse roster last year, they made the playoffs and gave the Vancouver Canucks fits. Albeit that appearance to the Dans came off a ridiculous point streak in which they played some of the most unsustainable hockey you've ever seen. But still, they made it. And now they suck. When Barry Trotz became GM of the Preds 2 years ago, there was a lot of hype of a former elite coach now becoming the head mantle of the team, the general manager. And this was, at the time, a stagnating franchise. The Preds of that time were not the Predators that we know of today. I mean, they are. They were treading water, bobbing like a fish that bobs in water. And they didn't really have a direction. They had been riding the waves of Roman Josi having an out of his mind year. Should have got the Norris. And also Forsberg having a career year, but other than that, it was kind of barren. They had just gotten obliterated by the Avs in which Saros was injured, and they were swept. And a rebuild might have been the move. This is a great drafting team. They are able to retool on the fly. I mean, look at the history of selecting defensemen. Shea Weber, Yossi, Fabro, Ekholm, Ellis, Jesus Christ. Forwards are a different story. But still, you can make it work. But Trotz had other plans, boldly making his plans public to the media, and as we know now, from a certain bald-headed man from Orleans, always works out in one's favor. His first offseason was as aggressive as one could get, buying out Duchesne and Johansson, two pillars of the old core. And those moves so far today have been mixed. Johansson looks like the right call as he's stagnated and has gone out of the league because he might have faked an injury. But Duchesne is killing in Dallas, and we'll soon see later, you could use a guy like that. So what did he do with his savings? Well, he went out and got some veteran players in Gustav Nyquist, Ryan O'Reilly, and defenseman Luke Schenn. Nothing splashy. The moves will fill holes in line that need to be addressed. And along with the core they had, they could make some noise. The one thing was clear. They weren't pushing the teardown button just yet. It's contending time. Will this be a right decision? Well, after a slow start to the year, the Preds went on a warpath to push for a spot in the playoffs, and largely led by additions they added as well. It fell short, but still, O'Reilly had a career year, Nyquist had an out of his mind year, like look at his stats. But this was definitely something they could build off. Also, the prospect pool was surprisingly strong with Joakim Kemell, Evangelista, and blue chip goalie prospect Yaroslav Askarov. Just don't ask what Ray Ferrar's opinions on him. He hates him. Maybe a rebuild wasn't needed. But the actions during this offseason is so confounding, especially from the trend we've already established from last year, that I don't even know if Trotz was one orchestrating it. They went out and pretty much handicapped themselves for 2 years out. What do I mean? Well, a lot of players assigned were players that were in their absolute primes, like Marchessault and Shea, or out of it in the case of Stamkos. Just throwing money around like an up-and-coming rapper at a strip club. Barry was spending big. And for what? None of the moves they made fixed any weaknesses. Their biggest fault was high-end talent coming up short because they didn't have much of it, and the Canucks just outmanning them. They outplayed the Canucks in some parts of the series, but the talent, in some aspects, wasn't there. So you go out and spend big on players who are complementary pieces on their respective teams, where the high-end talent on your team isn't able to elevate the complementary players. See the issue here? But the hype was real though. Look, I know r/hockey isn't exactly glorious hockey hive mind of knowledge, but a poll that stated that 98% of the users thought they'd make the playoffs. 98! And 42% of them thought they'd make the Western Conference Finals. There was hype for this team, even more so after they traded Askarov for futures, solidifying that this team was no longer a youth movement supporter. What's wrong with this team? Well, let's start with the positives, because there's not much. The team's defense isn't great, but it certainly isn't the worst team in the league quality. Most losses have been by 2 or less goals, which A, means Saros is playing out of his mind, and B, the team defense isn't the biggest issue. What it is though, is the offense. And the moves they made haven't addressed it at all. Stamkos Strip looks like a Kucherov merchant and can't do anything 5-on-5. And how much did you pay him? Shea looks dreadful and signed him for 7 years. Every move Trotz made has blown up spectacularly. Now the point of this video isn't specifically about Nashville. As easy it is to make fun of bad GMs, they are part of a greater issue. There is a growing trend in hockey right now where rebuilds are apparently the hardest thing in the world to do. Now it's always been pretty hard to do it, but when you see general managers galaxy bringing the most obvious decisions, it makes it even more stupider. This trend is rushing a rebuild. Now I could have easily highlighted teams like the Red Wings and unfortunately my Ottawa Senators, but Nashville seemed more fitting because how abrasive it was. Now you have Trotz saying it's a rebuild time, not even at the halfway point of the year. The Yzerman spent 2 different off seasons buying high on players like Kopp, Comfort, Perron, Kubalik, Hall, Petrie, Sherrod, DeBrincat, and Keane, all in an effort to speed up a rebuild that looks stagnant. It's not worked. Ottawa bought on DeBrincat Chikrin, spending high draft picks on both, and they both got traded for less than when they bought them for. When you look at successful rebuilds like the Devils, the Rangers, never mind, and the Kings, those teams made strategic acquisitions to fill holes that need to be filled. Pause. Hamilton, Pesce, Dillon to shore up a Devils defense that was young and inexperienced, and Jacob Markstrom to stabilize the net. The Kings bought on Fiala and other depth pieces, and now they're among the best defensive teams in the league. Know how none of the moves that were made were impulsive nor drastic by those two GMs. Well, except PLD. Don't know what type of crack Rob Blake was on when he made that trade. When you see those moves and compare to the name chasing of the Preds, or the oversaturation of veteran presence of the Red Wings, or the draft pick sling of the Pierre Dorian Senators, that's not smart, nor savvy. Straight idiotic. The Rick Nash Blue Jackets. Those teams were awful. For pretty much every year except one. Thanks, Steve Mason. They were able to draft high, and my god, did they swing and miss on so many draft picks. All in an effort to surround the one draft pick they hit on, Rick Nash. However, they were able to get, miraculously, some decent selections. Brassard, Voracek. That's about it. Told you it was small. So Doug McLean went with his second option. Buy like it's Black Friday on Walmart in 2011 when there's a TV available for you to buy for half off. God, I miss those days. Andrew Castles, Brian Berard, Michael Pekka, who I did not know even played for Columbus, nor Toronto. Wait, what? And the most flashy of them all, Sergei Fedorov, a playmaking winger who would in theory work perfectly with a scoring first power forward in Rick Nash. It worked in Detroit with Shanahan, Hull, Yzerman, Datsuk, Zetterberg. Okay, maybe Fedorov had some talent in Detroit. But along with all this was what it's going to take to elevate the club's Blue Jackets into playoff contending status. And they still have most of their prospect pool and draft capital to work with. But still, this wasn't enough. They still missed the playoffs, with Rick Nash having career hot years. And new GM Scott Howson went ape shit. He went out and got Antoine Vermette, Christian Uselius, Andre Umberger, Jason Williams, well not that one, Rafi Torres, Mike Commodore, and Fedor Tutin. And for all of that, it cost them pretty much all their main draft picked capital and prospect pool. Pascal Leclerc was involved in the Vermette trade, their high pick in 2003. Umberger cost a first, became Lucas Spiza. Tutin cost a high-flying Russian winger Nikolai Zerdev, was also a pretty high draft pick, but still, that didn't work. They made the playoffs, yes. That attempt was thwarted in an unbelievable sweep by, Detroit. Also, if it wasn't for an insane year from Steve Mason, this entire thing wouldn't even have been worked out. So they went for Tsar Bomba, their last hope of salvaging the Rick Nash era. The Jeff Carter trade tree affects 3 different teams: the Flyers, the Kings, and Columbus. 2 of those teams came out like thieves, and one got fucked royally. Take a wild guess who the unlucky fella is. To give a top 8 pick that later became Sean Couturier for like 50 games of Jeff Carter, a Jeff Carter that openly didn't give a shit about your team, and to trade him for significantly less, all from to win a cup for this team, is incredible. For everybody except Columbus. All of this, all of these moves, all these free agent signings, all these trades of prospects, trading first round picks, all came from one thing: trying to rush a rebuild. A rebuild that could have been sped up by better drafting. They had the high picks. They had the opportunity to select the team that needed to be selected. And they had the superstar. But it all blew up in their face because of one thing. And thus, Columbus has never recovered. So let's go back to the team we highlighted at the beginning. Our glorious Nashville Predators. Home of the Catfish. What did they do wrong? Should they have entered a rebuild after 2022 or hell even 2020 after a loss to but the way the team played in 2024 could have fooled anybody. Hell, it fooled me. And adding to that core made sense. Just how it made sense for the Devils to add their young core. Just like how it made sense for the Kings to add their young core. It makes sense for all the teams to add. But what didn't make sense was how they went at it. Buying names and forgetting about fit and combinations has proven to be at fault for a lot of failed rebuilds. Especially when the players added was supposed to fix the glaring issue that you currently possess. The Devils add players to fill holes in defense and goaltending. That's adding to rebuild gone right. What the Preds did, and the Wings, the Sabres in 2015, and the trade for O'Reilly, Kane, and Leonard, and Columbus did, was go after names, and rushing a rebuild wasn't needed. Now, does it make sense for a team to not add at all and just wait for the draft picks to hit and turn out and carry the team? Absolutely not. That's how you get Taylor the Sabres in the third rebuild. Oh my god, this is how many rebuilds has this team done? Adding is paramount, but name chasing for the sake of making rebuild look better on paper isn't the way to go. And yes, Habs fans, that includes you guys with line A. Look at his 5 and 5 stats and come back to me. Let's say Nashville didn't add Stamkos, who looks like a black hole 5 on 5, is making $8 million a year. I'm so sorry, guys. Let's say they added, I don't know, Jake Gensel instead of Stamkos, and Marchessault and Shea. They added a guy like Gossesphere. They're in much better shape offensively while keeping the same balance of defense. Now, this could be a case for signing players that want to come to Nashville. The Preds are one of the few teams that play in a state with no state income tax, so in theory, they shouldn't have this issue. Rebuilds are tough. That's why, kids, sit down, guys. When you play franchise mode and select a medium league guy in the 4th round from Estonia named George Yager and quickly flip him for a top 6 forward, don't see yourselves in the eyes of a qualified GM. These guys get paid millions of dollars to assemble a cup-winning squad, while 31 other equally as qualified men in suits do the exact same thing. On top of that, every move they make needs to be explained, and depending on who your owner is, you have to bullshit your way to an explanation of why he can't spend to the cap. I am so sorry, Kevin Adams. So next time you call your GM a bitch on Twitter because he didn't claim a bomb 6'4" with top 10 draft pedigree and waivers, just remember one thing. These guys go through a lot, and their job is tough. Except Chris Drury, I have no idea what his issue is.